June is a interesting year to try to talk about football, period. I mean, it's almost a very interesting time of the year to try to talk about any sport, period, because after the NBA Finals in June, there's not really anything of significance going on in any of the major sports. I mean, if you look at baseball, it's in the middle of the dog days for that sport. If you look at basketball, the finals just ended after the first week. If you look at football, there's no OTAs. There's one mandatory minicamp for 2 days, and then nothing until training camp starts. June is literally the biggest dead period in sports. It's a vacation time for sports fans. It's a time for, if you have a lot of sports fans in your family, for you to plan a wedding. And with this lack of news and lack of things to really talk about, one of the things that has dipped into my mind is this idea that's been floated out recently that the NFL could threaten to extend the season to a 18-game season. And I'm here to tell you this week why that's a terrible idea. Now, to start, it says that NFL owners want to increase the regular season to 18 games. Now, this is something that is very heavily linked to Jerry Jones, who kind of floated this ideal out last season. And is now coming back because there's probably nothing to talk about. So it's more than likely that the NFL is not serious about having an 18-game regular season and is using that as more as a tool for leverage in negotiation for the upcoming CBA, which is going to be, by the way, a very nasty negotiation. Now, an 18-game regular season is not something I see that is likely or something that would be good for the NFL. But before I expand upon why I don't think it's a good idea, I'm going to first talk about, in an attempt to be fair to the idea, why the 18-game regular season would benefit certain people if it were to happen. Now, the first one of these things is that, well, there'd be more games, which is good for fans because, there's more football to watch. And the NFL is kind of bittersweet in a way that the NFL season can only have so many games by the nature of the sport. So adding 2 more games would be something that would be appreciated by NFL fans. Also, there would be an extra home game for NFL teams. And this would really benefit, cities, not cities like New York and LA that already can attract huge events that can fill up these giant football stadiums in the offseason, like a WrestleMania or a Final Four or, those kind of events. It would be more helpful to smaller cities, cities like Cleveland, cities like Green Bay, that have these giant 70, 80,000 seater football stadiums that are only really useful for 8 to 10 dates a year on the NFL calendar, and 2 of those dates are preseason games. So I can understand why it would make more sense. It's an extra day of revenue. It's an extra day that somebody gets to work concessions. It's an extra day that security gets to be paid more. It's an extra day of money. It's an extra day of money that can go into local bars, downtown establishments, all of that fun jazz. So it would actually have a benefit to the cities who pay an exorbitant amount of money to have these stadiums put up in the first place. Also, selfishly, they extended to 18 games would be good for people like me who talk about, NFL on YouTube. It would give us more stuff to talk about throughout the year, more games to react to, which would, of course, bring more views and bring more revenue to people like me. It would be a huge benefit, and it would cut the dead period that I'm talking about in June by 2 weeks by virtue of just advancing the NFL calendar 2 more weeks. It would also make the season end sometime in late February, maybe even March. And then if you look at this from a player's perspective and some of the positives that they can gain from playing a longer season. Now, the proposed plan says that they might cut 2 weeks of the preseason out, but they might not. But if you're a player, you get paid for 2 extra weeks. Your training camp period is going to be lessened if they do cut the two preseason games, and you might be able to work in an extra bye week if they throw you to 18 games, which is going to be, 2 bye weeks guaranteed in the season, which is going to be better. So those are the good things about extending the season to 18 games. Now, some of those reasons are pretty legit and pretty reasonable. But some of those reasons, aren't worth what an 18-game regular season would do to the structure of the NFL and how it's set up. And that's where we're going to get into why this is a terrible, trash idea to extend the season to 18 games. Because yes, while short term, we would get 2 extra games a week, everything else that makes up the NFL schedule, the NFL structure, how the NFL is able to make a balanced game would immediately go to crap because we added 2 games. And if you think I'm being dramatic, let's do a little bit of math. See, the NFL schedule makers have a perfect balance to work with. There's 32 teams and there's 16 games per season. Each team is in one of 2 16-team conferences, and within each conference there are 4 4-team divisions. It is perfectly divisible by 4, which means that the schedule, when they make it, can be perfectly divisible by 4 4-game chunks. And those 4-game chunks, for those of you who aren't familiar with the NFL schedule making process, is there are 4 division home games, there are 4 division road games. This gives there more meaning to the division that you're in. It gives more weight to the division championship. It is one of the few major sports that has real weight to a division championship. If you look at basketball, the division championship means nothing. I couldn't even tell you every team in the Cavs division. But if you look at it in football, the division is important. Almost in every NFL division, every NFL team is a rival with the teams in their division, and that is by good design by virtue of the schedule. So those are 2 of the 4-game chunks for the schedule. The next 4-game chunk is the interconference 4-game chunk. That means that each year, a AFC division or NFC division is assigned a division from the opposite conference. Now, it's a little bit complicated by the way I describe it, so I'll give you an example. Say you're in the AFC North. This year, every team in the AFC North will play every team in the AFC West. And then next year, it will rotate to the NFC East, I believe. It keeps rotating and rotating until you go around the whole conference. Now, this is really good because interconference play in football is hard. It's also hard to do with balance. This way, each team in a division is playing the same team from a different division. So it keeps interconference play balanced within the division. Also, it allows the schedule each year to have freshness to it. So each year when they announce the schedule, you know that there are at least 4 teams on that schedule that you have not played in 4 years by virtue of how they rotate the schedule. And that keeps things fresh. And then the last 4-game chunk is the most vital when it comes to balancing every team's schedule league-wide, is that each team plays the same team from their conference that finished in the same place that team finished the previous year. So long story short, if the Browns finish in 3rd place in the AFC North, that means that they would play every 3rd place team in the AFC, which allows there to be more balance, which is going to let the Browns play lesser opponents next year, which is going to give them a leg up since they were a lesser team technically by virtue of where they placed last year. And that is the NFL schedule making process. It is one of the least complicated, least convoluted, least controversial schedule making processes in sports. It's balanced, it's fair, it's almost perfect because it's able to be split perfectly into those 4-game chunks. And if you add 2 games in there, you ruin the entire system. Where are those 2 games going to come from? Are they just going to be random teams? Are we going to start having to have weird systems like college football conferences have when they don't have enough teams to play each other without playing everybody twice? Are we going to have to do weird crap like that? Is the NFL schedule now going to be some kind of controversial point that I'm going to have to hear argued about on First Take and Get Up because it's gone to crap because they want to add 2 games? And I can understand blowing up the whole system because you needed to add a couple more teams or you need to add more franchises, and that sacrifice is worth it. But adding 2 games just to add 2 games to literally spite the Players Association is just a terrible ideal. And it turns people off from football when decisions are being made not for the fans, not for the people playing the game, but for the egos of the owners. And that would be something that's just stupid, in my opinion. You have a perfect balance with 16 games. 16 games is like the perfect amount of games you should play in football in a regular season. I mean, it allows you to be able to make a fair schedule. It is the perfect amount of games that's satisfactory to NFL fans for a season-long wait. It is just perfect. 16 games is perfect. Adding 2 more, it just ruins the whole. What if your team finishes like 10-8? That just don't even feel right. That's not football. That's awful. Don't do that. If you really wanted to do something for the fans and possibly add an extra home game for some teams, you could get rid of the first round bye in football, which I've always thought was weird, and just add 2 more teams. And instead of making it a wild card first round, just make the first round a first round of the playoffs. That would be awesome. That would be great. If you could have 8 teams per conference make the playoffs, that would be great. I mean, think about the weekend that the first weekend of the playoffs would be. On Saturday, there's going to be a game at 1 o'clock, a game at 4 o'clock, and a game at 8 o'clock. And then you go to sleep and you wake up and it's Sunday and there's a game, a playoff winner-take-all game at 1 o'clock and another one at 4 o'clock and another one at 8 o'clock. And then you go to sleep, you do stuff with your family, you go to work because it's Monday, and you come back, it's 5 o'clock. And what do? Boom, Monday Night Football, 2 playoff games back to back for you right after work. And that is the opening weekend to the NFL playoffs. Right after the college football has their national championship, you get to have that. And that would be like a fantastic opening weekend to the playoffs. Like, oh my gosh, that sounds like a holiday ready to happen. So just imagine if they could do that. That would be great for the fans, for the teams that are in the playoffs, for the teams that get the extra home games. That would be awesome for everybody involved. And I know, okay, they technically lose the first round bye, but the first round bye is so weird in the NFL, in my opinion. Like, if one team got it, then okay, whatever. You know, it's like baseball where there's like a play-in game or whatever. But since there's like 2 teams that get a first round bye, and then there's one team that can win their division, be one of the best teams in football, and still have to play in this first round, it's weird. Just make everybody play in the first round, add 2 teams, give us the most awesome football weekend that sports can give you in the opening weekend of the playoffs, and boom. You get everything you get from adding 2 games to the regular season, but you make it a lot more enticing for the fans, and you didn't have to wear your players out to do it. Honestly, I'm just here for adding 2 more teams to the playoffs. That's really why I made this video. Point is that there are a lot of ways to improve the NFL season. The one thing that doesn't need to be improved, the one thing that they actually got right, is the length of the season. And that doesn't need to be touched. So NFL, please listen to me, a fan. Don't extend the season to 18 games, because that would ruin a lot of what I love about how the NFL in particular is structured so beautifully. But that is it for this week, guys. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think an 18-game regular season would be like. Do you want one? Do you look forward to one? Or do you think, like me, that idea would be like setting fire to the system that we have in NFL? And if you really like this video and you really like what I had to say, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and if you want to show some extra love, ding that notification bell so you can know when I upload, exactly when that's ready to go. I upload 3 times a week, so you will be having a lot of fresh content to watch. And if you have a $1 or $2 to spare, please consider joining the Patreon and having your name added to the fresh ticker down below. That is it, guys, for this episode. Have a great day and have a good night.